Initiating moisture.
Welcome to the Moist Meter. Today we're taking a look at the new James Bond film, No Time to Die. James Bond is a franchise that's pretty near and dear to me. As a kid, my parents had like the entire set of James Bond films on VHS, and I watched them all the fucking time. Specifically, GoldenEye. I must have rewatched that movie 100 times, and that movie still holds up today. That shit still slaps ass hard. It is so good. And of course, the games back then on the N64, oh, classics. So James Bond is definitely a franchise that's always gotten me excited and made me feel nostalgic. Even when new ones come out, it's always like getting to revisit an old friend. And Daniel Craig era Bond films are extremely good. I think they're very high quality, albeit very different from the earlier Bond films. His are far darker and take themselves more seriously, but I still enjoy them. And this is the last movie to conclude that era of Daniel Craig as Bond. And I think the movie does a nice job of wrapping it all up. I think it's a satisfying conclusion, albeit not perfect by any means, but still a really enjoyable ride one last time with Daniel Craig as Bond. So let's get into it. Daniel Craig plays a much more vulnerable Bond this time around. The movie starts with him being retired, and we get to see what that looks like for him. And surprise, surprise, it looks a lot like when he's not retired, where he's getting fucking blasted and peppered with bullets all hours of the day. Shit's going wild and wacky. He's jumping off of bridges just to survive. People around him just getting hit by cars and executed in the streets. Fucking mangled corpses littered everywhere. So, retirement's kind of shitty, to be honest. But we get to see him be far more emotional this time around because he's spending his time with a woman that he loves, and we get to see what James Bond caring for someone really looks like. For the longest time, James Bond, not just Daniel Craig era, but James Bond in general, has been a character where every movie he fucks a different woman, and then the woman will die, and he's just like, shucks, what in tarnation, she's dead? Who? Who was that again? Oh, yeah, we had sex once, I don't really care. Like, he gets over it real quick. Even if they have, like, a connection that seems strong in the movie, when they die, it's just like, he'll kick some sand and be like, damn, and then move on, and, they never really address it again. It's completely different this time around, whereas in other Bond films, James will get told, like, hey, remember that girl that you were in love with, like, 5 minutes ago? Well, she fell into a wood chipper, and she's dead now. And James is just like, a wood chipper? Oh, no, yucky. Well, I'm gonna go get a martini now. And then everyone just forgets about her. This time, this is woman he will do anything for. And we get to see that side of him where he's emotional. We get to see what him caring about someone looks like, which is something that I can't recall ever really being explored that thoroughly in the James Bond franchise. And I think it's nice. It's good to see that here, to have that kind of development with the Daniel Craig James Bond character. And I also do welcome that they added a little more lightheartedness to some of the scenes. Like I said, the Daniel Craig era has been much darker, which I think is fine. I think that's great. But it's also nice to have a little bit of that campiness from the originals kind of shine through sometimes here. They'll have some goofy lines out of nowhere, like he'll just murder someone and then make a joke about it, like, yeah, I blew this guy's mind, and his fucking brain matters all over the place. It's nice to see that campiness. It's not like super prevalent in the film. It's not all the time, but when it's there, it's like a nice little refreshing treat that I think a lot of Bond fans will appreciate. Really, overall, I had a great time watching this movie. Like I said, it's not perfect, and I'll get to that in a minute, but I think the narrative here and the choices they made with the story were really smart. So they bring a lot of familiar faces back. Spectre's the main antagonist here. That's not a spoiler. You're getting a lot of Spectre stuff going on. But then, as it continues to evolve, you get to be introduced to a couple of new faces here. And I think one of them that's very strong is, of course, the one that most of you are familiar with from the trailers, Ramy Malik. He plays really the big bad guy, the raid boss here. And I think as a character, he's a bit weak, but the performance from Ramy really helps elevate it. The character, I think, is a bit silly at times. They really like plants, and they're not happy about stuff, so they're going to use plants to take their revenge and like hurt people because of plants. And with plants, it's just it's a little goofy sometimes. And I think some of the things the character does and says are very, very silly. I don't want to get into spoilers. I still think overall it's a villain that's pretty good. It's definitely a strong final villain, just a bit goofy at times. But anyway, I don't have any real complaints about the story. One thing I was worried that might happen with the film is that the 007 replacement, now this isn't a spoiler, this is also in the trailers, since 007 was assumed dead or retired, they do have a replacement for him. I was a bit worried that they were going to be the focal point of the film and James would take a backseat to his own movie. I was kind of expecting that because we've seen it before in a couple of films, but I was happy to see that they really share the stage well together. The new 007 and James Bond, they work really well together, and when they're fighting and beating ass and, blasting skulls, it's really great to see that. I think she does a great job. She's never like, in your face, James, you fucking suck, you're old and wrinkly and you smell like dick. She's pretty respectful of him. It's like a playful banter between her and James Bond when they're on screen, and it evolves into a pretty solid chemistry between the two of them when you get to the final act. So I really thought they did a good job with her character. And one thing that this movie does extraordinarily well with is action. The set pieces here are fucking beautiful most of the time. And the action is great. It's really grounded in reality. There's nothing like outlandish here that happens, and it's never like hard to look at where it's jarring cuts that make it really difficult to see what's actually going on. It doesn't obscure the action. You get to just watch James Bond be a badass. You get to watch current 007 be a badass, and you're never like bored. There's a character in here that I wish they had more of, and I don't think this is a spoiler, she's in the trailer, played by Ana de Armas, I believe her name is. I think that's correct. She plays a character that James Bond meets, and then they work together in order to just fucking obliterate an entire town, and she is great. Like that entire fight sequence where her and James are working together, I thought was spectacular. All of the action in this movie is just so good. James just being like the ultimate killing machine, 007 also just going wild on a bunch of bad guys. Like, what more could you want from James Bond besides beautiful action and a fun ride? And I think this delivers on that for sure. Now, I want to get to my complaints, though. I think one of the big things that this movie kind of fumbles with is getting from point A to point B. Like, to me, sometimes it feels like things are a bit off, as if like things were cut together incorrectly. So you'll go from one thing to the next and nothing that really bridges that gap. It's hard for me to explain without getting into spoilers, which I don't really feel like doing for this one. It's just sometimes there's like a lack of reason behind things that happen, in my opinion. Like, maybe I missed it, like maybe I'm just too fucking stupid sometimes, but I feel like some of the plot elements here just don't add up. Alright, fuck it. Real quick spoiler warning, because this is the one that I want to talk about. So spoiler warning, let's get that out of the way. Okay, and now I want to talk about it. So one of the biggest things that happens at the beginning of the movie is James and Madeline, they're hanging out. They're enjoying retirement together. They're madly in love. They're making out. They're fucking and shit. And then he goes and visits the grave of Vesper, which is a character that you'll know from the previous Bond films. He goes and visits her grave, and then all of a sudden an explosion happens. The grave blows up right in his face. He gets sent back, and then he's dazed, and then getting hunted by all kinds of people, all bad guys after him. And then he goes back to Madeline and thinks he's been betrayed by her, so he sends her on a train, never to see her again. And then it's revealed in a big twist that she never betrayed him. It was actually Blofeld from Spectre. And my immediate question when this was revealed is, why? Like, he just randomly placed a bomb at that gravesite, hoping James would go visit it at some point, and then he did, and then finally this plan gets to spring into action. Like, what the fuck was the point? Is it just like an epic prank or something? And his explanation is even sillier. He's like, I knew you would suspect her. And then I wanted you to live in a world that's as lonely as the one you put me in. Because he abandoned the girl that he loved, thinking that he had been betrayed by her. And it's like, that's such a gamble. Like, there's a very good chance he just would never go visit that grave. Ever. And there's also an even smaller chance that he would visit the grave while you also have bad guys nearby and a bomb that's been waiting there for God knows how long. You know, it could have been a dud for how long it must have been, just like collecting dust. It's very silly. And it's also dumb in retrospect because he even said, or she even says, "Why would I betray you, James?" And he never has an answer for it. So he never stops to ask himself, why would she betray him? He just immediately assumes she must have, without even considering the alternatives of maybe it was someone else of the millions and millions of people that are hunting him. Maybe it was one of them that don't like him, as opposed to the girl that's doing everything for him, staying by his side, and then again asking him, challenging him, like, why would I do this, James? And he never even bothers to even like think about it. He's just like, yeah, I got betrayed. Fuck, can't trust women out here, I guess. Like, it's just a bit weird. Okay, spoilers are over. So to me, there's just certain things about the plot that don't work. They don't add up, and it just gets a little off the rails and a bit silly. It's also a really long movie. It's almost 3 hours. It's 2 hours 43 minutes. So strap in for a long ride with this one. And also get used to seeing James just eat explosions. The amount of times like a grenade will go off in his goddamn stomach and he'll just get blown back and be like, yeah, that's fine, I'm good. Like, ears are ringing a little bit, but he cleans them out with his finger and he's back to normal, is shocking. You know, he's blown up in this movie constantly. Literally sitting on just dynamite, and he'll just be fine when it blows up. So also get used to seeing that, because that happens like 3 or 4 times in this one. But anyway, I really enjoyed it. Plugging No Time to Die into the Moist meter, I'm giving it a nice 85%. That's a little high, I think, like maybe an 85%. I really enjoyed it, but there are things here that I don't think worked super well for the film. But overall, it's hard not to really appreciate what it did. I think this was a great finale to the Daniel Craig era of Bond. I had a lot of fun watching it, and I had a big smile on my face to see it all play out. And I know Daniel Craig has said he's really tired of playing James Bond at some point, or at least I read that. But he did such a great job with this one. I think he did it justice, and he really put it all on the line to give a great conclusion to a character that a lot of people really like. So I think the movie's good. I had a good time with it, and that's about it. I'm a man who values hygiene, but not just good hygiene, the best hygiene, which is why I use Dr. Squatch. Dr. Squatch has the best products to really take your shower game to the next level. They just provide you with high-performing, high-quality soaps that use natural ingredients with really great scents. The one that I've been using is the Wood Barrel Bourbon. This is my fresh one. I have a couple of these, and I've been really enjoying that one. It makes you feel like a man and smell like a champion. For a long time, I've used liquid soap, but ever since trying Dr. Squatch, it makes me not want to ever go back to that, because Dr. Squatch is just the best bar of soap I've ever tried. So if you're interested in trying Dr. Squatch products for yourself, use code MOIST and click the link in the description below to get up to 20% off of orders of $20 or more. It's code MOIST and clicking the link in the description below for 20% off of orders of $20 or more at Dr. Squatch.